She was just a nanny, doing her job caring for an elderly woman with Alzheimer's. But when the millionaire son of her employer walked in, he had no idea what he was about to uncover. What he found shattered everything he thought he knew about: trust, race, and loyalty. In the blink of an eye, this woman was forced to choose between what was right and what was easy. But what would she do when the truth finally came out? A truth that no one expected, and one that exposed the darkest corners of a family's secret. This is her story, and it's about more than just caregiving. It's about standing up when everything else seems wrong. Tasha had always been the steady force in the house. She was the nanny, yes, but to Mrs. Donovan, she was much more than that. She was a protector, a friend, a caretaker. Tasha had been looking after the family for years, watching over Mrs. Donovan, an elderly woman suffering from Alzheimer's. Every day, Tasha arrived at the large, sprawling estate, stepping into her usual routine. She'd prepare breakfast, help Mrs. Donovan with her morning pills, and sit with her while she drifted in and out of memories. It was simple, predictable work, but it was also personal. The bond they shared, the quiet trust, was something no one could take away. Or so Tasha thought. Then one afternoon, the phone rang. It was Charles Donovan, the millionaire son who had been away on business for months. He was coming home early, and that's when the tension started. She felt it the moment he walked through the door. Something had changed, and Tasha knew it. But she had no idea just how much. Tasha could feel the shift the moment Charles stepped through the door. There was something different about him now, something cold. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the way he looked at her as though seeing her for the first time made her skin crawl. At first he was polite, even if a little distant. She assumed it was just the stress of work. But then things started to change. It began subtly, his words, his questions. "How long have you been working for us?" he asked one evening when Mrs. Donovan was dozing on the couch. It wasn't the question that bothered her, but the way he asked it, as if it were somehow too long. Tasha had always felt part of the family, but now something in his voice made her doubt that. Then came the first incident. Tasha had just helped Mrs. Donovan into the bathroom when she heard Charles's voice from the hallway, sharp and accusing. "Why is my mother's medicine always running low?" he demanded, stepping into the room without warning. His eyes scanned the shelves as if looking for a mistake. Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She had been careful with the medication, more than careful. Mrs. Donovan needed it, but Charles wasn't asking. He was accusing. "I've been taking care of her for years," Tasha said, her voice steady but trembling. "I'd never—" Charles cut her off, his voice rising. "You're taking advantage of her, of us. I know what you people do." The words hit her like a slap. Tasha froze, her breath caught in her chest. She had heard those words before, too many times. "You people." He didn't have to say anything more. He didn't have to explain that he meant black people. She knew exactly what he was implying. The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Tasha stood there stunned. It was the first time anyone had spoken to her like that, and it stung more than she cared to admit. But it wasn't the last time. The days that followed were filled with tension. Charles began to nitpick everything she did. The way she prepared Mrs. Donovan's meals, the way she managed her time. It was as if no matter how perfect her care was, it would never be enough. His comments became sharper, more pointed. "You're not qualified," he said one afternoon when she was helping Mrs. Donovan get dressed. "I don't trust you with my mother anymore." Each word was like a crack in the foundation she had worked so hard to build. Tasha could feel the walls closing in, the sense of isolation growing. She wasn't just the nanny anymore, she was the outsider, the other. But she didn't want to believe it. She refused to believe that after all these years of trust, it could end like this. Then, one evening, things took a darker turn. Tasha had just finished preparing dinner when Charles called her into the living room. Mrs. Donovan was asleep in her chair, her fragile frame wrapped in a thick blanket. Charles was standing by the window, his back to her. "I don't know why I didn't see it before," he said without turning around. "You've been taking advantage of my family this whole time." Tasha's heart sank. The words were like a blow harder than the last. She wanted to say something, wanted to defend herself, to scream that she had never done anything but care for his mother. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just stood there, waiting for him to say the next cruel thing, wondering what would come next. But then he did something unexpected. He turned around, his face cold, almost calculating. "I'm going to have you replaced," he said quietly. "You're not welcome here anymore." The words hung in the air, the final blow. Tasha's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. She wasn't going to leave, not like this, not when she had done nothing wrong, but she also knew that standing up to him would only make things worse. She had no choice but to play along, to bide her time. But every minute she stayed in that house felt like a countdown to something worse. It was the night everything changed. The air was thick with tension as Charles walked into the living room, his eyes fixed on Tasha, his expression colder than ever. Mrs. Donovan, completely unaware, sat in her chair, wrapped in the same blanket Tasha had draped over her for the past few days. Charles stood in the doorway, his gaze cutting into her. "I'm done," he said, his voice steady but filled with finality. "I've had enough of you and your lies." Tasha's heart pounded in her chest, her body frozen, every muscle tense. She had braced for this moment, but it was worse than anything she'd imagined. His eyes, those piercing eyes, burned with a fire that she could see was meant to break her. She had been taking care of his mother, loving her as her own, and yet this was how he was repaying her. "I know what you're doing," Charles continued, stepping closer, his voice lowering into something far more menacing. "All this time, you've been playing the good nanny, the angel, but I know the truth. You think I don't see it? You think I don't know you've been—" He couldn't even finish the sentence. The word he didn't say was enough. He didn't have to finish. It was there in the air between them, an accusation that didn't need to be spoken. "You think I'm the one who's been lying," Tasha finally said, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and hurt. "I've been here every day. I've cared for her while you were gone. I've been more than you deserve. And you—" She took a breath, her fists clenched at her sides. "You accuse me of stealing from you? Of hurting your mother?" Charles scoffed, and the dismissiveness in his eyes felt like a slap. "You've been nothing but a liability, and now it's time for you to go." Tasha's pulse raced. She could feel the tears threatening to rise, but she refused to let them show. She had worked so hard, so long to prove her worth, and now this. She wasn't going to beg for her job back. She wasn't going to plead. "No," she said, standing her ground. "I'm not going anywhere." Charles's face darkened, his lips curling into a sneer. "You're nothing," he spat. "Do you really think I'll let a person like you, someone who's nothing but a charity case, stay in my mother's house?" The words stung, deeper than any physical blow could. But before Tasha could respond, something shifted in the room. Mrs. Donovan, stirred by the tension, lifted her head, blinking as if she were just waking from a dream. "Tasha," she murmured, her voice soft and confused. "What's happening?" It was like a crack in the armor, a moment of clarity that cut through the chaos. Charles paused, his anger faltering for just a second as he looked at his mother, vulnerable in her confusion. For a moment, Tasha thought she might finally have the upper hand. But then, without warning, Charles snapped back into his cold resolve, his eyes locking with hers again. "I'm calling the police," he said, his voice devoid of emotion, just business. "You're trespassing. You'll never work in this town again." Tasha felt the floor drop from beneath her. She could hear the sirens in her mind, the weight of the words, police, trespassing. But she wasn't just a trespasser. She had been more to Mrs. Donovan than Charles ever could be. And in that moment, Tasha realized something. No matter what happened tonight, no matter how this played out, she was done pretending, done shrinking. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up for what was right. Tasha didn't know how long she stood there, her heart pounding in her chest as Charles's cold words echoed in the room. But then, something within her snapped. The weight of years of hard work, of trust broken and betrayed, ignited a fire inside her. She wasn't going to let him destroy everything she had fought for. With a calm she didn't know she had, Tasha looked Charles in the eye. "I've given everything to this family," she said, her voice steady but filled with undeniable strength. "But I won't let you treat me like this, not anymore." Charles, for all his arrogance, didn't expect this. He stammered, his authority crumbling before her eyes. The power he had wielded in his privilege began to slip away, just as quickly as he had tried to strip it from her. The silence between them hung heavy, filled with the realization that there was no going back. But as Tasha walked away from the confrontation, she knew something had shifted, something deeper than her role in that house. For the first time, she was not just fighting for her job or her dignity. She was fighting for respect, for humanity. She wasn't going to be a passive character in this story anymore. And though she didn't know what the future held, she knew one thing. She was no longer afraid. The next few weeks were a blur. Charles, furious and embarrassed, tried to remove her from the house, but he couldn't do it. Tasha had become a voice of strength, not just for Mrs. Donovan, but for herself. And the more Charles pushed, the more people began to stand with her. Others within the house, employees, even some of his own friends began to question his actions. Word of the incident spread, and slowly, the walls of privilege that had once protected him began to crumble. In the end, Tasha was allowed to stay, her position secure. But the victory wasn't just in her continued employment. It was in the realization that she had taken a stand, not just for her, but for anyone who had ever been silenced or dismissed because of the color of their skin. The aftermath of that moment rippled far beyond that house. It wasn't just one person's story. It was a reflection of something much bigger, a systemic issue that still plagues society today. It's a story that countless people experience daily. And it's a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, standing up for what is right can start a chain reaction of change. So what happens now? Will we keep turning a blind eye to injustice? Or will we, like Tasha, find the courage to stand up and say, enough is enough? This isn't just about one woman's fight for her dignity. It's about all of us and the world we're shaping for the generations to come. The question is, when will we finally stop letting this story repeat itself? When will we stop being silent in the face of injustice? The time to act is now, and it starts with us.